The store was breathing. Not literally, of course, but Ethan Granger could feel it. Standing in the dim center aisle floorboards, groaning beneath his boots, dust thick enough to choke the air. He swore the walls exhaled around him, like they'd been holding something in for years, maybe decades. He should have waited for daylight. Instead, here he was, flashlight in hand, midnight, chill crawling up the back of his neck inside the old Thornfield General Store, which had sat untouched on Main Street, Jericho, Montana, for longer than anyone in town seemed willing to say. Outside, the wind whipped past broken signage flapping a torn, auctioned property notice on the front window. Inside, silence reigned thick, waiting, listening. He swept the light across warped shelves, brittle packaging, and a calendar from 1996 still nailed to the far wall. It felt like time had stopped and no one had noticed. The place smelled like mold and paper. And something else. Old wood and bad memory. Ethan's fingers tightened around the flashlight. He hadn't planned on being here this late, but something had tugged at him all day since receiving the keys, a strange need to see the store in solitude before beginning renovations tomorrow. That was when he'd first noticed the door. Set in the far back wall, nearly hidden behind a rack of rusted farm tools, was a tall oak door, different from the others. He'd walked the perimeter 3 times earlier and could have sworn this wall was solid. But now, under his light, the door was plain as day. And it was wrong. Ethan had left Chicago 6 months ago after a messy divorce, burned out, broke, and bitter. He thought moving west, buying something cheap, fixing it up might give him purpose again. He hadn't expected to win the auction. $100. No one else had bid. The auctioneer called it the Thornfield Curse with a chuckle, then handed over a brittle deed and a small ring of old-fashioned brass keys. "It's all yours," he said. "Every nail, every squeak, every ghost." Ethan had laughed at the time. He wasn't laughing now. Because this door wasn't on the blueprint, and none of the keys fit. He ran his hand across the wood. It was smooth, dark, dense, unlike any other door in the building. No handle, no visible lock, no hinges on this side. Just a rectangle carved into the wall that refused to acknowledge it didn't belong. He pressed his ear to it. Nothing. Then the air changed. Not a breeze, but a shift, like pressure building behind a dam. And then thump. A single hollow knock. From the other side. Ethan jerked back, nearly dropping the flashlight. His breath caught in his throat. He waited. 1 second. 2. 10. Nothing else came. Still, it was enough. He left the back room in a hurry, brushing cobwebs from his sleeves, and locked the front entrance behind him with hands that weren't quite steady. The next morning, Jericho looked harmless again. Quiet. Sunny. Dust blowing down Main Street like tumbleweeds had missed their cue. Ethan stood on the sidewalk sipping gas station coffee, watching his new store from across the road like it might blink or vanish. It didn't. The door hadn't been a dream. He turned toward the boarding house to check on a noise and found a woman watching him through a screened porch. "New owner," she called. Her voice had a worn grace to it, like a vinyl record, soft, but scratchy from use. "Yeah," Ethan said, stepping closer. She stood. Mid-30s, practical clothes, eyes sharp behind simple glasses. "Nora Whitfield," she said. "I run the place across the street. That store's been quiet a long time." Ethan nodded. "Not quiet enough last night." She frowned. "You were inside after dark. I had the keys. Figured I'd get a feel for the place." Nora glanced past him at the store like it might be listening, then back to Ethan. You see the door. Ethan froze. She already knew. Back wall, he said slowly. Oak, no handle. Wasn't on any blueprint. Her face paled. She stepped down from the porch. It's still there. He nodded. You know what it is. No one does. She crossed her arms, unsettled. But everyone in town knows it's there. And yet no one's opened it. Not since Samuel Dawson tried. 10 years ago. Ethan had read the name on the deed history. The previous owner's tenant. Carpenter. He died of a heart attack, right? Nora looked him straight in the eye. That's what they wrote down. But if a building's been locked up this long, she said quietly, maybe it was never meant to be opened. Ethan didn't answer. The words stuck in his head as he crossed back to the store. That door hadn't just been closed. It had been sealed, like a warning. The knock came again, sharper this time. 3 quick raps, then silence. Ethan sat bolt upright in bed, the sheets tangled around his legs, heart hammering like it was trying to punch a hole through his ribs. He stared into the dark room of the boarding house, eyes adjusting to the faint light bleeding in from the street lamp outside. He wasn't dreaming. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't old pipes. It was coming from the store. From that door. He grabbed his phone. 3:14 a.m. For a full minute, he just sat there listening. But no follow-up knock came. Eventually, he exhaled, long, shaky, and leaned forward, hands covering his face. He'd only been in Jericho for 3 days, but already he was unraveling. A voice in the back of his head whispered the same thing over and over. You should have never opened that front door. The next morning, he didn't go back to the store. Instead, he made his way to the boarding house kitchen, where the smell of fresh coffee and frying bacon almost convinced him everything was fine. Almost. Nora Whitfield stood at the stove, hair tied back in a red bandana, flipping pancakes with easy rhythm. She didn't look up when he entered. You look like you slept in a ditch, she said casually. I feel like it too. She poured a second mug and handed it over. You heard it again. It wasn't a question. Ethan took the cup, 3 knocks, middle of the night. Nora set the spatula down and finally turned to face him. That's how it always starts. He sipped the coffee, trying to steady his nerves. You said Samuel Dawson tried to open the door. What happened to him really? Nora leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. He was a good man. Lived a few blocks east with his wife Martha. Carved wood furniture, helped rebuild the church roof after the storm in '03. So why would a guy like that go messing with something nobody wanted opened? She hesitated. Curiosity. Maybe guilt. Guilt, rumor is, he helped build part of that room before it was sealed. She shook her head. He never said what he found, only that it was wrong. He stopped sleeping, started acting strange, and then he was gone. Heart attack. That's what the coroner said. But he was 35 and healthy. No history, no signs. His wife found him slumped over his workbench like someone just switched him off. Ethan set the cup down. You're telling me that door kills people. I'm telling you this town has long memories and short conversations. Most folks here pretend that door doesn't exist, and the ones who don't. She looked him dead in the eye. They leave, or they end up like Samuel. He didn't respond. Because what could he say? Listen, she continued. I've lived here all my life. I've seen that building change hands 4 times. Everyone sells it again within a year if they last that long. The Thornfields have tried to buy it back every time. Why? What's so important back there? Her expression darkened. Eli Thornfield built half this town with his bare hands and the other half with secrets. Whatever's behind that door, it's the part he never wanted found. Ethan stared into his coffee. Then he said it out loud, the thing that had been gnawing at him since yesterday. That door should have rotted off its hinges, but it's still there like it's waiting. Nora nodded slowly. Exactly. He left the kitchen without finishing breakfast. By midday, Ethan was pacing inside the store again, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other. He told himself he wasn't going to open anything, just look. But that door had a gravitational pull like the whole building was built around it. A wrongness in its design. A void with its own heartbeat. He crouched to the floor and examined the gouges he'd seen the day before, subtle scrapes along the baseboards, like someone had tried to force the door open from underneath. Samuel's doing. Ethan ran his hand along the edge of the frame again. Still no hinges, no seam. Just a door that sat flush against the wall, sealed tighter than a tomb. He tapped it once with the crowbar. Hollow. Again. Thump. It thumped back. Ethan froze. His breath caught. This time the knock was intentional and came from the other side, not like a rattle or a shift in the wood. This was a response. He backed away slowly, hand tightening on the crowbar, nerves buzzing like static under his skin. That's when he saw the figure in the window. Not inside. Outside. A woman maybe in her late 20s, dressed in dark jeans and a green coat, stood staring through the cracked front glass. She looked hesitant, almost confused, until she saw Ethan and raised a hand in greeting. He opened the door, heart still racing. "Can I help you?" She offered a quick smile. "You're the new owner." "Depends. Who's asking?" "I'm Emily Dawson." "Samuel was my uncle." He blinked. "You're Emily, the historian?" She nodded. "I heard someone bought the store. Figured I should come see it for myself." Ethan stepped aside. "Come in. Just a heads up. The place has its moods." She gave a dry chuckle, but stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the room. "I haven't been in here since I was a kid." "Did you know about the door?" Emily turned toward the back and froze. "It's still there. That's what everyone keeps saying." Her voice dropped. "He used to talk about it. Said it wasn't a room. Said it was a vault." Ethan swallowed. "You think he knew what was inside?" She nodded. "And I think he was killed for it." That night, Ethan sat alone in the boarding house again, flipping through an old blueprint Emily had brought, one she found in her uncle's trunk after his death. The blueprints showed something chilling, a 13th room that didn't exist on any of the official permits. No label, no measurements, just a small square void behind the oak door. He ran his fingers over the print. That knock wasn't random. Someone or something was in there, waiting. Ethan had seen a lot of things in his life that didn't make sense, grief that twisted people inside out, betrayal from people you trusted, a justice system that picked winners. But this was different. This was ancient silence, the kind that wrapped around your thoughts like barbed wire. He sat on the edge of the boarding house porch that morning, staring across the street at the Thornfield store, its front windows blank and still. Inside that building was a door that answered back, and now a blueprint showing a room that officially didn't exist. He glanced at the folded copy of the blueprint in his hand. Room 13. No measurements, no door marked, no entry. What if it's a vault, Emily had said, a place to hide something, or someone? And now they needed to find the one person left in Jericho who might know something real Harvey Tucker. They found him around noon sitting on an upturned paint bucket behind a rusting gas station at the end of Main Street. He was shelling sunflower seeds into a coffee can and squinting into the fall sun like it owed him money. Emily spoke first. "Mr. Tucker." His head turned slowly. One good eye, gray beard, wrinkled flannel. Depends who's asking. "I'm Emily Dawson. This is Ethan Granger. We were hoping you might tell us something about the Thornfield store." He snorted. "No one's asked me about that place in a long time." "We heard you helped build part of it," Ethan said. "Back when Eli Thornfield owned it." "Yeah, I worked the frame and the drywalls in the 80s. Harvey dropped another seed shell into the can. Regretted it ever since. Emily stepped forward. "My uncle was Samuel Dawson. He—" Harvey cut her off with a sharp look. "I know who your uncle was. Smart man. Honest, which made him dangerous around here." Ethan knelt down to his level. He left us some notes. A sketch of a room behind the back wall, and something about pressure points in the door. The older man stiffened, hand pausing mid-shell. "You shouldn't be messing with that." "We already opened the wall," Emily said. "Found the door. It knocked back." Harvey blinked. "It what?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I know how it sounds." Harvey tossed the seeds aside. "No, you don't. You think you own that store?" His voice dropped. "Son, that store owns you now." The words hung in the air like smoke. Harvey stood up and motioned for them to follow him inside the station. The place was a time capsule, wood stove, oil cans, faded hunting posters. He locked the front door behind them. "Your uncle came to me 10 years ago, right before he died," Harvey said, voice low. "He'd found something, said it was going to blow the whole town open." "What did he find?" Emily asked. "Paperwork, pictures, maps of old mining claims forged. Proof that Thornfield and half the town's founding families stole land, faked titles, even had people disappeared. It was all behind that door." "Why didn't he go to the authorities?" Ethan asked. "He tried. Sheriff told him to drop it. Next day he got a visit from Caleb Thornfield. Day after that, he was dead." Emily swallowed hard. "So my uncle was murdered?" Harvey nodded once. "I don't need a death certificate to tell me when a man gets scared to death." He walked over to a drawer and pulled out an old, rolled-up blueprint, brittle and yellowing. "You want to know the part I built?" He spread it on the counter. It was the original design of the store, but this version had a hand-drawn room added later, shaded in pencils from 13. No doors in or out. Just a sealed chamber. Eli called it his insurance vault. I didn't ask questions. Ethan traced the pencil outline. "No way in or out unless you go through the oak door." "Exactly." Harvey tapped the page. "And that door custom job, designed by Eli himself. Wood's eastern black oak reinforced inside. And no hinges, just a weighted latch and internal mechanism built into the frame. You press 2 spots on opposite sides of the door, simultaneously hold for 10 seconds, and it clicks open." Emily stepped back. "That's what Samuel's notes said. Pressure points." Harvey looked pained. "He asked me to help him open it. I said no. I was afraid. I still am." "Why? Because if the Thornfields find out you've been poking around in that room, you're not going to end up with answers. You're going to end up like Samuel." Ethan stood still, heart thudding. It's too late for that, Harvey. Caleb already knows I own the place. He came by yesterday, tried to buy it back. Offered $5,000. The older man laughed, humorless. You could have asked for 50. He still would have paid. That room, whatever's inside, is worth killing for. A silence settled between them. Emily broke it. Will you help us open it? Harvey looked at her like she'd asked him to dig his own grave. You don't want what's in there, sweetheart. But we need it. Her voice was steady. If we don't open that door, they'll keep getting away with it, like they always have. He shook his head, but his hands trembled. I'll tell you this much, if you go through with it, do it in daylight. And don't go in alone. Ethan nodded. We won't. Harvey stared out the window, eyes distant. You think this town looks quiet, but it's only quiet because everyone agreed a long time ago not to talk about certain things. He turned back to them. If you break that silence, you better be ready for what comes next. They left a few minutes later with copies of the original plans and a warning that would not stop echoing in Ethan's mind. That night, after dinner, Ethan and Emily sat on the floor of the store's back room blueprint, between them flashlight shining on the seams of the oak door. Ethan found the first spot just above waist height left side. Emily placed her hand on the opposite panel. They looked at each other. On 3, Ethan said, 1, 2. From outside, a car engine sputtered and died. A door slammed, and then boots on gravel. Someone was outside. Watching. Waiting. The footsteps stopped just outside the window. Ethan slowly turned off the flashlight. The silence that followed was the kind that hummed behind your ears, thick with the potential of something going very wrong. Emily didn't move, her hand still resting on the pressure point of the oak door. Her breathing was tight and shallow. Another step. Gravel crunched just beyond the wall. Then a sharp knock on the front glass, not the back door this time, but the main entrance. 3 precise raps. Ethan got to his feet, slowly motioning for Emily to stay behind. He crossed the store's dusty floor boots, barely making a sound on the warped boards. As he neared the window, he caught the outline of a woman standing on the other side of the cracked pane, arms, folded, chin tucked into a long brown coat. She didn't look scared. She looked like she'd been waiting. Ethan unlatched the front door. You the guy who bought this place? She asked. That depends. Depends on what? On whether you're here to threaten me or not. She cracked the barest smile. Not today. He opened the door wider. Then come in. She stepped into the gloom like she belonged there. Early 40s, maybe, dark eyes, sunburned skin, the kind of woman who'd seen more than she let on. Emily stepped out from the shadows, in the back, arms crossed. I know who you are, the woman said to her. You've got your uncle's eyes. Emily stiffened. How do you... I used to know Samuel. A long time ago. Ethan closed the door. Name Martha Dawson. Emily's breath caught. My aunt, she whispered. Martha nodded. That's impossible. You left town the night of the funeral. No one's seen you since. I had my reasons. You vanished. I was told to leave. She looked toward the back of the store. And I listened. Ethan stepped between them. What are you doing here now? Martha looked him square in the face. Because I know you're trying to open that door. And if you're going to do it, you need to understand what's behind it, and what it costs to keep it sealed. They sat at the old counter beneath a flickering lantern, surrounded by silence and dust, and the weight of buried history. Martha sipped from a chipped enamel mug Ethan had dug up from a crate. "I told Samuel not to get involved," she began. "We could have left this place. We had family in Utah, friends down in Boise. But he couldn't let it go. Not once he found out what Eli Thornfield had built back there." Emily stared at her. What did he find evidence? Of everything. The land theft, the forged mine deeds, the bribes to judges, the payouts to disappear witnesses. Eli kept it all like some twisted diary. Why, Ethan asked. Because power doesn't come from silence. It comes from leverage. Eli didn't just want to be rich, he wanted to control everyone around him. So he built that room as a vault, a blackmail box, and the door custom job. He hired some engineer from back east to design it. No hinges, no latch, no knob. You had to press 2 points in sync. One man alone couldn't open it. Eli thought it was foolproof. It wasn't, Emily said. Martha looked at her. No, because Samuel figured it out. She paused, voice tightening. That night he asked me to help him open it. I refused. I begged him not to. We argued. He left. She blinked, eyes wet, but not spilling. He didn't come home. Ethan leaned in. You really think Thornfield killed him? Martha looked at him like the question insulted her. I know Caleb did. Caleb, Emily echoed. He came to the house the next morning. Said Samuel was trespassing. Said he was sorry for my loss, but it'd be best if I left town quietly. He didn't threaten me with words he didn't have to. You didn't tell anyone I tried. Sheriff Hanley poured me a cup of coffee and said maybe it was grief talking. Judge Whitmore wouldn't even hear me out. They were all in on it. I had nothing. So I ran. Emily shook her head slowly, trying to piece together the timeline, the silence. The way her family had folded inward after the funeral. The way no one ever talked about Samuel's death again. Ethan stepped forward. We're not backing down. Not now. We've got Harvey on record. We've got the blueprints. We're close. Martha didn't smile. That's what Samuel said. Maybe so, Ethan replied. But this time we're not doing it in the dark. Martha stood. If you open that room, you'd better be ready to deal with the fallout. Once that truth comes out, this town's never going to be the same. Maybe it shouldn't be, Emily said. Later that night, after Martha left without saying where she was staying, Emily and Ethan sat side by side on the floor again, the flashlight illuminating the lower panels of the oak door. Ethan tapped the left side pressure point lightly. We were 1 second away, he murmured. Emily didn't move. She's still scared. She should be. But we can't be. They sat in silence. Then Ethan asked, if we get it open, what's the first thing we look for? Emily didn't hesitate. Proof that my uncle didn't die for nothing. They started cataloging everything they'd need. Gloves, a second flashlight, a camera, batteries, printed blueprints, digital backups. They agreed to open the door tomorrow at dawn when the town was quiet and they could work without being watched. As Ethan stood to stretch, he glanced toward the front window and froze. A figure stood across the street, half lit by the flickering street lamp. A man, broad-shouldered, still, watching. Then slowly he turned and walked into the dark. Ethan didn't move for a full minute, because he knew who it was. Caleb Thornfield. The first rays of dawn bled across Main Street like a slow-moving fire, casting long shadows over the faded storefronts of Jericho. The town was silent. No engines, no footsteps, no birdsong. Just the wind and the weight of what was about to happen. Ethan unlocked the front door of the store with steady hands, Emily close behind him. She clutched a small canvas satchel filled with essentials, camera, flash drive, notebook, gloves. He carried a crowbar and the flashlight, but neither of them spoke as they crossed the threshold. They didn't need to. The silence between them was full of purpose. The door waited for them in the back, like it always had, tall, unmoving, defiant. A slab of black oak wedged into the wall like it had been planted there, not built. Ethan knelt first. Emily mirrored him on the opposite side. "No backing out," she whispered. "Not today." They found the two pressure points without hesitation, 3 feet up, perfectly aligned. Ethan gave her a short nod. On 3, he said, 1, 2, 3. They pressed. The moment their hands touched the wood, a low groan echoed from within the frame, like old bones shifting under a forgotten floor. They held steady. 4 seconds. 6. Then click. A second mechanism released. Gears deep inside the wall turned with a rusty complaint. The sound was ancient, deliberate. 10 seconds passed. And then for the first time in what could have been 30 years or more, the door inhaled. A soft hiss of air sucked inward as the oak panel pulled slightly from the wall. Not swinging open, but relaxing. The pressure seal broken. Ethan pushed gently. It gave. The door creaked open into a narrow passage cloaked in stale air and darkness. The beam of the flashlight caught floating dust motes and the rough edges of old brick. The scent hit them immediately, not death, but time. Paper. Ink. Something stored too long in silence. Emily stepped in first. Ethan followed. The room was maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. No windows, no vents. The walls were lined with metal filing cabinets, each drawer labeled with names, dates, and initials. A wooden desk sat at the center, perfectly preserved under a thin sheet of plastic. But it was the far wall that stopped them both in their tracks. Dozens of photographs, each mounted neatly on corkboard, lined the space. Black and white, faded color, grainy surveillance shots. Handshakes in back alleys. Meetings behind courthouses. Men passing envelopes. Women signing contracts. Surveyors posing with mining stakes that no longer existed. Each photo had a label beneath it. W. Hanley. Land forgery, 1991. E. Whitmore. Witness suppression, 1987. B. Rains. Property seizure from native family, 1974. Names they knew. Faces they recognized. The backbone of Jericho's entire infrastructure. Ethan stepped forward, heart pounding. "Jesus," he whispered. "This isn't just a vault. This is a ledger of sins." Emily moved to the desk. She peeled back the plastic sheet and revealed a collection of ledgers, handwritten, meticulously organized. Maps, notes, even personal letters. Every drawer she opened revealed more signed confessions, altered deeds, transcripts of bribes. "This is everything my uncle tried to warn people about," she said, voice shaking. "All of it." But Ethan wasn't listening anymore, because one photo stood alone in the bottom corner of the board. A man in his 30s, partially turned toward the camera. Dirty jeans, sweat-soaked shirt, a shovel in his hands. A shallow grave behind him. The caption read, "S. Dawson, Octifung." Problem solved. Ethan stepped back like he'd been hit. Emily saw it, and for a moment she didn't breathe. "That's Caleb," she whispered. "That's he buried my uncle." He nodded slowly. That door didn't just hide secrets. It documented them. Someone photographed that murder. Who? Eli, probably. Or someone he paid. He must have suspected his own son. Emily turned away, tears streaking her face. Her shoulders shook, not from grief, but fury. "He didn't just kill my uncle," she said through clenched teeth. "He erased him. Until now." Ethan touched her arm. "We have the proof now. We go public. We take it to the marshal. Hell the feds if we have to." Emily looked back at the desk. "We take all of it. Every file, every name. We copy everything and send it everywhere." Ethan nodded. "Let's get it packed up." They started photographing each page, each photo documenting the evidence. Emily worked the camera while Ethan scanned through drawer after drawer, matching names to property lines, courthouse records, business licenses. It was endless and overwhelming. But it was also truth. And it was finally theirs. Then Ethan froze. Near the bottom of the desk was a locked drawer. He used the crowbar and popped it open. Inside was a small notebook, leather-bound, worn smooth. He flipped it open and scanned the contents. Handwriting, not Eli's, more fluid, nervous. At the top of the first page, Samuel's final log. He read aloud, Day 12. "The door mechanism is unlike anything I've seen. Pressure-based locking. Built to contain, not just protect. I believe it was made to keep something in." Emily lowered the camera. Ethan flipped the page. "It's more than blackmail." Samuel thought Thornfield was hiding something, a person or evidence too dangerous to circulate. At the very bottom, in a shaky scrawl, "He knows I'm close. If you're reading this, I didn't make it. But the town still can." Ethan closed the journal. A slow breath. "We need to get out of here," he said. "Now." They began packing the files, top targets first. Photos. Ledgers. That one photo of Caleb most of all. Ethan heard the front door of the store creak open. Then heavy footsteps on the floorboards. Not the wind. Not a dream. Emily locked eyes with him, then slipped the photo of her uncle's murder into her coat. Ethan stood, crowbar gripped tight. A voice drifted down the hallway. Calm. Cold. "I warned you, Granger." Caleb Thornfield had come home. "Put the bag down." Caleb's voice echoed through the store, measured and calm, the kind of calm that only came from confidence backed by violence. Ethan tightened his grip on the crowbar. Emily froze beside him, clutching the canvas satchel like it contained the last beating heart of the town. In a way it did. Footsteps creaked across the front boards, slow, deliberate. Caleb wasn't in a rush. He didn't have to be. "I told you," he called again. "You bought a store. What you really bought was a loaded gun with no safety." Ethan stepped in front of Emily, motioning toward the back exit with his chin. "We can't outrun him," she whispered. "We don't need to. We just need leverage. Got any of that besides a crowbar and a conscience?" He didn't answer. The heavy outline of Caleb Thornfield appeared in the hallway, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, his suit jacket dusty from the morning wind. But his expression hadn't changed since the day he tried to buy them off. That same cold smirk, like this had been inevitable. "I knew you'd open it," he said, stepping closer. "Curiosity's a disease around here." Ethan held the crowbar low. "You brought this on yourself, Caleb. Your father's vault, it's a bomb waiting to go off." Caleb tilted his head. "And yet here I am. Standing. Breathing. Not arrested. Not dead. Makes you wonder how many people really want that bomb defused." Emily stepped out from behind Ethan. "We have the proof. You killed Samuel Dawson. We have the photo." He glanced at her eyes, narrowing. "You don't want to play that card." She didn't flinch. I already did. That cracked the smirk. A flicker of uncertainty flashed behind his eyes, then disappeared just as fast. Caleb took another step forward. You think exposing the truth will save this town? His voice grew harder. It'll burn it to ash. Maybe that's what needs to happen, Ethan shot back. Maybe Jericho's been a lie for too long. Caleb exhaled slowly. You sound just like your uncle, he said to Emily. Self-righteous, noble, doomed. He gestured behind him, and two men stepped out of the shadows near the front door. Same heavies from the day before. One with a shaved head, the other with a denim vest and a ball bat slung casually over one shoulder. Emily glanced at Ethan. I hope you have a bluff. I do, he said loud enough for Caleb to hear. We made copies, sent them out. If anything happens to us, it all goes public. Caleb arched an eyebrow. You sure about that? Sure enough. He turned toward his men. Check their bags. No one's checking anything, came a new voice from the front door. All heads turned. Harvey Tucker, holding a sawed-off shotgun in his weathered hands, stood just inside the threshold. Step away from the kids, Thornfield. Caleb's jaw clenched. You're retired, old man. I was retired, Harvey said. Then you started digging up the dead. Caleb sneered. You think pointing a gun makes you the law now? No, Harvey said. But it makes me the man standing between you and another murder. Emily moved quickly, backing toward the vault door, sliding the satchel behind the desk. Ethan joined her. They didn't need to win a fight, they just needed time. But Caleb wasn't done. I don't care what's in that room, he growled. I care what people think is in it. You release those files, and half this town falls apart. Then half the town needs to fall, Emily said. Caleb stared at her. You think this is about truth, this is about control. Eli knew it. That's why he built the vault. Not to expose anyone, to keep them in line. Ethan stepped forward. You think you can keep the lid on forever? I did for 15 years. By killing people. Caleb didn't blink. And I'll keep doing it if I have to. Harvey cocked the shotgun. No, he said. You won't. For a moment, no one moved. Then from outside, a car door slammed. Another. Footsteps. Emily turned to the back door. That's not ours. Voices rose outside. One of them clear. Official. Commanding. A new figure entered the store, tall, dark coat badge gleaming from his belt. Deputy U.S. Marshal Ryan Thompson. His voice carried authority like steel. Behind him, Nora Whitfield stepped in, holding up a battered notebook. I told you I'd keep this safe, she said, breathless. The marshal turned to Caleb. We've got sworn statements, original records, and a visual record of your presence at the crime scene. We've been monitoring this location since yesterday. Caleb's mouth opened, then shut. He glanced at his men. The one with the bat took a step back. Harvey smiled. Told you. Marshal Thompson pulled handcuffs from his belt. Caleb Thornfield, you're under arrest for the murder of Samuel Dawson, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to cover up federal land fraud. Emily stepped forward, the murder photo in her hand. This is for my uncle. The marshal took the photo and nodded to one of his deputies waiting outside. We've got enough to unspool Jericho's entire power structure. Caleb's voice dropped low and venomous. You have no idea what you're unleashing. Ethan stepped beside Emily. Then maybe it's time someone finally did. As the deputies escorted Caleb and his men outside, Harvey lowered the shotgun. Nora exhaled hard. Silence settled once more, but this time it wasn't oppressive. It was relief. Emily looked down at the satchel, then back toward the open vault. "We still have work to do," she said. Ethan nodded. "Then let's finish it." They started at sunrise. The vault door now stood wide open, its thick hinges groaning slightly each time someone brushed past. The air inside was still musty, but not ominous anymore. It was no longer a tomb of secrets, it was evidence. Emily and Ethan worked under the marshal's supervision, cataloging the files, photographing every document, and scanning each ledger. Nora brought them coffee, her hands steady, but her eyes betraying the weight of what they'd uncovered. Harvey sat near the back shotgun, still across his lap, like a loyal dog. He hadn't said much since the arrest, but he hadn't left either. They'd gone through 3 full file boxes by the time Emily cracked open a lower drawer and held up a sealed envelope marked with a single word in red ink, Marshall. She turned to Thompson, who set his cup down and took the envelope carefully. He slid it open, pulled out a typewritten page, and began to read, his brow furrowed halfway through. "What is it?" Ethan asked. Thompson looked up, then folded the page and slipped it into his coat. "Personal letter from Eli Thornfield to the territorial marshal at the time. Doesn't change anything." Emily frowned. "That's a weird thing to leave behind, don't you think?" He forced a smile. "You'd be surprised how paranoid rich men can get." Ethan didn't like the tone. Too rehearsed. They kept working. An hour later, Emily found something else, a separate key hidden in the spine of a ledger. Old, rusted, but clearly important. It had the initials E.T. etched into the handle. "Another vault?" Ethan asked. "Or something he didn't want opened unless he was dead," Emily muttered. Before they could speculate further, one of Thompson's deputies stepped inside. "Sir, we've got a situation." "What kind?" Thompson asked. The deputy leaned in, voice low. "Hanley's gone. Gone. Sheriff's station was cleared out this morning. Files burned. Witnesses say he left town last night with a suitcase and a box of papers." Thompson cursed under his breath. Ethan stepped forward. "He was in the vault photos. We saw his name on at least 6 forged deeds." Emily nodded. He knew what was coming. Thompson gave orders to alert highway patrol, then returned to the vault. "Let's focus. We've got enough here to lock down Jericho's history for the next 50 years. But something had shifted. The room didn't feel like justice anymore. It felt like pressure. Emily handed over a second satchel full of documents to a federal courier outside. "They're going straight to the district office," she said, "with backups." Ethan watched Thompson make a phone call, his voice low, words too careful. Something was off. As the vault was nearly cleared, Emily spotted something wedged behind the filing cabinet, a small recorder. She pulled it out, blew off the dust, and hit play. The voice crackled to life. Older. Raspy. "Eli Thornfield. If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone and someone finally pried open the door I never meant to be opened. God help you for it." Ethan leaned in. The voice continued. "This vault isn't about money. It's about balance, order, the chaos that'll come from releasing what's in here. We'll tear this town apart." The tape ended in static. Emily looked at Ethan. So he knew this would burn everything down. He nodded. And maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. Outside, Thompson stepped away to take another call. Alone. Ethan followed. He caught only the tail end. "No, sir. We contain it here. If it leaks, we lose control." Then silence. Thompson turned, startled. "Everything all right?" Ethan didn't answer the question. "We're almost done." Thompson nodded. Good. The sooner this is boxed up, the sooner I can secure a safe chain of custody. Ethan didn't believe him. He returned inside and found Emily flipping through a set of files marked U.S. Mars. Protected witness accounts. There were names in there, names not just of victims but collaborators. And one stood out. R. Thompson. She stared at it, color draining from her face. Ethan. He looked. Read it. R. Thompson. Liaison 2011. That's him, she whispered. Thompson. He's in this. Shit. They moved fast, grabbing the critical folders and stuffing them into a new bag. This one they wouldn't hand off. Nora met them at the back exit. What's wrong? We think the marshal's dirty. Her eyes widened. Are you sure? Emily nodded. His name's in the files, connected to cover-ups during his early career. He's been careful, but he's protecting something or someone. Nora didn't hesitate. Come with me. Now. They slipped out the back and around to her car, parked behind the boarding house. As she drove them toward the town outskirts, Emily clutched the satchel tight. They needed to find someone higher up, someone Thompson couldn't reach. In the passenger seat, Ethan stared out the window, his thoughts spinning. It made sense now. Thompson had shown up too fast. He'd known too much. And that letter, the one from Eli, he never let them see it. As the town shrank behind them, Emily finally spoke. You didn't just open a door, she said quietly. You lit a fuse. Ethan nodded slowly. And we're about to find out how big the blast is. The sun had barely crested the horizon when Nora's old Subaru crested the ridge heading west out of Jericho. Dust curled in the rearview mirror like smoke from a fuse trailing behind them, as if the town itself was trying to reach out and pull them back. In the back seat, Emily clutched the second satchel like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Inside were the most damning files documents, naming federal officers, business owners, judges, even members of the state senate, proof that Jericho's rot wasn't contained. It had spread. Where exactly are we headed? Ethan asked from the passenger seat, his voice tight. Boise. Nora said, eyes locked on the road. District office. Marshal Service HQ. A guy I trust works there. If we can get to him, really get to him, it won't matter who's trying to bury this. And if your guy's in on it too. She didn't answer right away. I've known Agent Ronan for 20 years. He worked clean. Didn't play ball with the boys in D.C. If he's not safe, no one is. Ethan glanced out the window. Thompson's going to realize we're gone. He already has, Emily said, pointing behind them. A plume of dust shot up from the far end of the road, black SUV fast and gaining. Nora cursed and punched the gas. Hang on. The Subaru jolted forward, engine groaning in protest, as the road turned to hard-packed dirt and then loose gravel. The SUV behind them grew larger in the mirror headlights, flashing once, then again, a signal, not a warning. They're trying to push us off the road, Ethan said. That's not law enforcement. That's a hit team. Thompson's pulling strings, Nora said, and he's done waiting. Emily dug into the bag and pulled out the audio recorder from the vault. We need to get this to the press, not just one agent, agreed, Ethan said. But first, we have to survive the drive. The SUV surged forward again, bumping closer. A sharp clang echoed as a chunk of rock pinged off their bumper. Nora swerved hard onto an access road that carved through the hills, kicking up a wall of dirt behind them. That's not the highway, Ethan said. Nope. It's the old timber trail. Back route to the state line. They won't know it if they're not local. The Subaru barreled through pine needles and over roots, every jolt rattling the frame. The SUV dropped out of view. Emily exhaled slowly. We lost them. Don't count on it, Ethan muttered. An hour later, they rolled into a small gas station just outside Emmett. Ethan checked the trunk, made sure the files were intact. Emily went inside to use the bathroom and wash the dust off her face. Inside, the clerk behind the counter, a kid no older than 20, smiled nervously as Nora paid for gas and coffee. "You folks heading far?" he asked, eyeing the mud-caked car. Nora didn't look up. "Far enough." The bell above the door chimed again. Ethan turned. A man in a sheriff's jacket stepped in, but not one from Jericho. Ada County. He locked eyes with Ethan. "You Granger?" Ethan tensed. "Depends. Relax, I'm not with them. Got a call from someone named Harvey. Told me to keep an eye out. Said you'd be coming through." Nora stepped forward. "Name Deputy Wade Marks." She studied him for a beat, then nodded. "You got ID?" He pulled it slowly from his coat. "Clean. Verified." Emily returned from the back, saw the uniform, and froze. "It's okay," Ethan said. "He's on our side." Wade gestured to the side of the station. "We need to talk. Outside." They stepped around the back of the building. Wade lit a cigarette and leaned against the concrete wall. "I don't know all the details, but I know enough. Thompson's got a history. There's rumors he's been cleaning up after the Thornfields for years. Feds have looked the other way." Nora nodded. "And now we've got proof. Then you need to move fast. If Thompson's running scared, he'll make noise. Pull favors, judges, marshals, press, it all moves slower than bullets, especially when he's the one holding the gun." Ethan glanced at Emily. "You trust Ronan, right?" She nodded. "We still go to Boise. I'll run point until you hit city limits," Wade said. "I've got friends who'll stall anyone following you." Ethan held out a hand. "Thanks." Wade shook it firmly. "Just don't die with that satchel. We've buried too many already." They reached Boise just after noon. The federal building rose like a fortress on the edge of downtown, clean glass, thick concrete, the kind of place meant to feel impenetrable. But Emily didn't feel safe. She felt like a spotlight was following her everywhere. Inside, Agent Ronan met them in a secure room on the 4th floor. Tall, silver hair, tired eyes. He wore a badge, but not the arrogance. His handshake was strong, but his voice was quiet. "I read your messages," he said. "I've got a small team on standby. No leaks. What you've brought me, it's big." Ethan placed the satchel on the table and unzipped it. "You're looking at decades of corruption, names, dates, photos. Some of them are yours." Ronan didn't flinch. "Let's see it." Over the next hour, they laid out the contents: photos from the vault wall, copies of bribes, land thefts, and the audio tape of Eli's confession. Ronan listened to every second in silence. When it was over, he leaned back. "You're right," he said. "This burns deep. I'll have to notify OIG and get the Justice Department involved." "Thompson knows we're here," Emily said. "He sent people after us. Then we have to move faster than him." Ronan stood. "You'll stay here tonight. I'll arrange federal protection." He turned to leave, but something in his tone, Ethan stopped him. "One question." Ronan paused. "Did you ever work Jericho?" A beat of silence. Ronan turned, face unreadable. "A long time ago. Before I knew what it really was." And then he left. Emily stood at the window looking out over the city. Sunlight reflected off the glass towers. It looked clean, honest. But so had Jericho. "You think we can trust him?" she asked. Ethan joined her. "We don't have a choice." Her voice dropped. "Then let's hope he's one of the good ones." Ethan nodded slowly, watching people pass below, like ants in a world they didn't know was cracking. If truth has no allies, we'll build some from the ashes. The safe house was a squat, nondescript building tucked into a quiet street behind a shuttered auto body shop in South Boise. From the outside, it looked abandoned, peeling paint, rust-stained gutters, and a sagging porch light. But inside, everything was state-issued efficiency, clean cots, reinforced locks, cameras on every corner. Emily sat at the narrow kitchen table, a mug of lukewarm coffee cupped between her hands. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a bone-deep ache in her chest. Ethan sat across from her, scanning the latest digital scans of the vault files on his laptop. Nora slept in the next room, curled under a government-issue blanket, one hand still curled around the pepper spray in her jacket pocket. The files were damning. Names, amounts, photos of grave sites, GPS coordinates of buried contracts. It wasn't just enough to convict. It was enough to change the history of Jericho. Emily looked over at Ethan. "Do you think Ronan's actually moving this up the chain?" Ethan didn't look up. "I think he's calculating the damage, seeing if the truth's worth the fallout." Emily leaned back in her chair, staring at the water stain above the window. "That's the problem, isn't it? The truth always costs something, sometimes too much." He finally met her gaze. "Then we make sure it costs the right people." A knock came at the door, 3 quick taps, then a pause, then 2 more. The signal Ronan had given them. Ethan moved to check the peephole. Ronan stood outside, dressed in casual clothes now. No badge, no tie, just jeans and a gray jacket. His face was tired. Ethan opened the door. "We need to talk," Ronan said. Inside, he dropped into a chair, running a hand over his face. "There's movement. Quiet calls, late-night meetings. Thompson's allies are panicking. But so are mine." Emily frowned. "Why?" "Because what you've found, it doesn't stop at Jericho. It touches federal contracts, tribal land claims, real estate developers tied to senators." He looked at Ethan. "You thought this was a town problem. It's national." "So what now?" Ethan asked. "I've got a team prepping a sealed report. We'll present it to the OIG and DOJ in the morning. But there's a leak." Nora stepped in from the hallway. "Where, don't know yet," Ronan said. "But someone tried to breach our database. They were looking for your upload folder." Emily's stomach turned. "We need another backup," she said. "Hard copy. Something no one can tamper with." "I've got a printer upstairs," Ronan said. "Secure line. Use it." They moved quickly. Ethan started formatting the files. Emily handled the images. Nora checked for duplicate or missing pages. They worked in silence for 20 minutes until the power cut. Total black. The hum of the fridge. The overhead lights. The soft whir of Ethan's laptop fan all gone. "What the hell?" Nora whispered. Ethan tried the light switch. Nothing. Emily's voice was low, sharp. That wasn't an outage. That was a kill switch. Ronan appeared in the hallway, flashlight in hand. "They found us." The front window shattered, a small brick crashing across the floor. A second later, the hiss of tear gas through a crack in the back door. Ethan grabbed the satchel. "Move!" They darted through the back hallway, smoke already curling under the door. Ronan opened a hidden panel beneath the staircase, a tunnel dark and narrow. "This way," he barked. They dove in, one by one. Nora last coughing. The tunnel dumped them into an alley a block away beside an old bike shop. Ronan was already on his phone. "I need immediate extraction. Site's been compromised. Repeat, compromised. 3 civilians. High priority intel. A beat. Then a curse. He turned to them. So, phones are tracked. We move on foot. Emily looked down at the satchel, then back toward the alley. You knew this could happen. He nodded. I didn't want to believe it would. They slipped into the shadows, moving east toward the river. Boise's streets were still asleep, but somewhere in the distance, tires screeched. They're not going to stop, Emily said. Ronan didn't answer. They ducked into a storm drain access point, climbed down flashlight beam bouncing off concrete. Ronan stopped near a junction. You go that way, he said, pointing left. It'll take you to a parking garage. Cars waiting. Head north. Ethan stared at him. You're not coming. They know I'm with you. I'll buy you time. Emily stepped forward. Ronan. But he held up a hand. If you want this to mean something, you have to live through it. Get to the press. The real press. Names like Cantwell or Figueroa. People who can't be bought. He reached into his coat, pulled out a burner phone. Take this. It has a number. One call. No more. When you're ready. Emily took it, handshaking. Ronan, why are you doing this? He looked at her for a long beat. Because once I stood by while a good man got buried for the sake of order. I won't do it again. He turned and vanished down the tunnel. They reached the garage an hour later. The car was there, an old gray Ford, unremarkable. Inside, a thumb drive taped beneath the dash and a printed note, Drive east. Avoid highways. You've got a 12-hour head start. As the sun broke over the horizon, Ethan drove in silence while Emily read through the latest files on the drive. Nora watched the side mirror like a hawk. They weren't safe. Not yet. But they weren't alone anymore. And they weren't running in the dark. They had names. They had faces. They had the truth. The motel was the kind of place that didn't ask questions. A neon vacancy sign flickered in the early morning gloom as Ethan pulled the Ford into the back lot. One-floor, rust-stained railing doors that all looked the same. Perfect. Room 12 smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. Emily didn't care. She threw her backpack on the bed and immediately began pulling out documents from the satchel maps. Contracts, photographs, laying them out on the bed like puzzle pieces. We've got maybe a day before they catch up, Ethan said, locking the door and double-checking the curtains. Then we need to make that day count. Emily replied, already powering up the burner laptop. We go live. Wide. All of it. Nora sat down in the armchair by the window, her eyes bloodshot. No press release, no email leaks. We stream it. Every page, live reading files and all. Make it impossible to ignore. Emily nodded. That was the plan. Now it's survival by signal. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through one of the recovered journals from the vault. Most of it was familiar property theft, bank collusion, but one entry stopped him cold. Meeting with T. Dawson scheduled. Not sure he understands the weight of what he's sitting on. Ethan blinked. T. Dawson. Emily looked up. Samuel, no. He turned the page. This is dated 1979. That's 20 years too early. Emily crossed the room, reading over his shoulder. What the hell? Nora stood, arms folded. Samuel had a brother. Ethan kept reading, flipping faster now. The first Dawson was smarter. Knew the land deeds were fake. Threatened to go to federal court. Had to be handled quietly. Samuel was the clean one, but never as sharp. Ethan's voice dropped. They didn't just kill a whistleblower. They killed his brother first. Emily's hands trembled as she picked up a folder they hadn't opened before. Inside, old black and white photographs, Survey maps from the 1970s newspaper clippings with partially blacked-out headlines. Then a photo slipped out. A man in a ranger's uniform, strong jaw, dark hair, standing beside a young Eli Thornfield at a logging boundary. Emily flipped it over. Scribbled in faded ink T. Dawson, Natal Park Service. 1979. Nora whispered, "They've been doing this for longer than any of us thought." Ethan stood slowly, and Eli started it. Not Caleb, not the sheriff. Eli orchestrated the first cover-up, killed a federal employee, and turned Jericho into a puppet show. Emily turned toward the laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Then that's the story we lead with. An hour later, the live stream went live. A grainy, dimly lit shot of Emily sitting in front of the motel curtains, a table lamp casting soft shadows behind her. She started with a simple line. "If you're watching this, it means the system didn't protect us, but we're not here for protection. We're here for the truth." She held up the photo of T. Dawson, then the murder file of Samuel. Ethan followed with the ledger's name after name, signature after signature, a paper trail soaked in decades of fear and blood. Nora read excerpts from the letters found in the vault. Testimonies, threats, confessions. The view count started small. Then it doubled, then tripled. Soon comments began flooding in. "Is this real? I knew Hanley was dirty. That's my grandfather's land." Ethan watched it unfold in real time, the first crack in the silence that Jericho had held for 40 years. Then a call came in on the burner phone. One ring, then silence. Emily picked it up, pressing it to her ear. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered, clipped and cold. "We've been watching. You've made enemies in places you don't even understand." "Who is this?" A beat of silence. "Then you think you've pulled back the curtain, but you haven't even found the stage." The line went dead. Emily turned to Ethan, pale. "They're not just trying to stop us. They're waiting for us to stop ourselves." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Then let's give them a reason to panic." He turned back to the vault documents, flipping through the final folder they hadn't touched. Something Nora had labeled Maisk. Inside was a torn piece of map, coordinates, circled in red, and a handwritten line beneath it. "Final asset buried. Deed untraceable. Witness handled." Emily traced the coordinates. "That's not Jericho." Ethan scanned the map. "It's west, toward the Snake River Basin." Nora looked between them. "You think it's where they buried the original contracts?" "Or something worse," Ethan said. "Something Eli thought was too dangerous even for the vault." Emily locked eyes with him. "We find that place, we find the beginning, and maybe the end." She turned back to the camera and looked straight into the lens. "This isn't the full story," she said, "but we're going to find it. And when we do, you'll know what they tried to keep buried forever." They shut the laptop down minutes later. Not because the story was over, because the next step had to be off-grid. As they packed, Ethan paused at the window, watching a black SUV crawl slowly down the street. Not chasing, not confronting. Watching. He closed the blinds. "They're letting us run." Emily zipped up the satchel. "Then let's make damn sure we don't run in circles." The Snake River twisted through the canyon like an ancient scar, wide and cold and full of secrets. The air was sharp, filled with the scent of pine, damp earth, and something older, something that didn't want to be disturbed. Ethan cut the engine and coasted the Ford off the gravel road onto a narrow path that led toward a bluff. The GPS had stopped working 20 minutes ago. They were following paper maps, now coordinates, scratched in Eli Thornfield's own hand. Emily stepped out, first tightening her coat. As wind whipped her hair around her face, she held the map in one hand, the photo of the marked location in the other. "This is it," she said. "Right here." Nora adjusted the backpack on her shoulders, eyeing the slope. "You really think they buried something out here?" Ethan locked the car. "Not something, everything." The three of them moved down the trail. Trees crowded in thick and knotted their roots, clutching the soil like fists. They walked for 20 minutes in silence before Emily stopped. "There." She pointed at a clearing just past a cluster of boulders. Half covered by moss, a rusted sign jutted out from the ground. "Property of Department of the Interior." Faded numbers stamped into the steel matched the digits on the map. They started to dig. It took hours. The sun began to drop behind the ridge as the shovel finally clanked against something hard. Ethan knelt, brushing aside dirt. A steel case locked, half-eaten by rust. They pried it open. Inside, old microfilm reels, faded photographs, contracts on federal letterhead, land transfer deeds bearing names of now-dead congressmen, and at the bottom, a thick manila envelope. Ethan pulled it out and opened it. Inside were surveillance photos, Emily's uncle Samuel Dawson, standing beside a man in a ranger uniform. Not Eli Thornfield. Harvey Tucker. Emily's breath caught. "What?" Nora leaned in. "That can't be right." Ethan read the attached memo aloud. "Asset H, codenamed Tide, used for control operations in Jericho between 1982 and 1999. Involved in Dawson cover-up. Confirmed termination order issued under Thornfield directive." Emily staggered back. "Harvey was part of it." Ethan looked stunned. He knew about the original land theft, the murders. He wasn't just a witness, he was their enforcer. Nora was already flipping through the rest of the contents. "This whole stash, it's not just evidence. It's a blackmail vault." Thornfield didn't just hide his secrets. He kept leverage on everyone involved. Emily stared at the ranger photo, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was there the night my uncle died." Ethan stood his jaw tight. "And now he's helping us, feeding us intel." Nora looked up from the files. "He's tying up his own loose ends." Emily stepped away, eyes fixed on the tree line. "The truth doesn't set you free," she said. "It just burns everything around you." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan broke the silence. "We need to confront him." Nora nodded. "He's still in Jericho, still playing both sides." Emily stuffed the documents back into the satchel. "Then we go back. One last time." Night fell as they drove. The wind howled outside the car, but inside it was silent. No one wanted to speak the thought hanging heavy in the air. Harvey Tucker had saved them. Harvey Tucker had also killed for Thornfield. By the time they crossed back into Jericho County, the roads were empty and the town was asleep. But not Harvey. He stood on the porch of his cabin, shotgun across his lap, as if he'd been waiting all night. A single porch light buzzed overhead. As the car approached, he stood slowly. Ethan stepped out first. "We need to talk." Harvey didn't flinch. "Figured you would." Emily approached next, holding the photo of him and Samuel. "You were there." His eyes fell on the photo. He didn't deny it. "Yeah," he said. "You worked for Eli." Ethan said. "I worked for the town," Harvey replied. That's what I told myself. Nora stepped beside them. You executed a federal witness. He nodded once, slow. Thornfield had me by the throat, had my wife's hospital bills in one hand and my mortgage in the other. I didn't have options back then. Just orders. Emily's voice broke. You could have told me. Harvey looked at her, really looked. I've been trying to make it right ever since. Feeding you intel. Pointing you toward the vault. Getting Thornfield's son put away. You think that makes up for what you did? Ethan asked. No. Harvey's voice was low. But it's all I've got left. A long silence followed. Then Emily stepped forward and handed him the photo. This ends now. We're exposing it all. Every name, every lie, including yours. Harvey nodded, not resisting. Then let me help you finish it. Ethan stared at him. Why? Because I can still open one last door. The one none of you know exists yet. Emily narrowed her eyes. What door? Harvey looked past them toward the empty street. The one Thornfield left behind in case everything fell apart. Harvey led them through Jericho's sleeping streets just before dawn. The air was cold and sharp, the kind that made each breath feel like a warning. No cars, no lights in windows, just the sound of their boots on cracked pavement and the occasional distant bark of a stray dog. Jericho had the hush of something about to end. They reached the courthouse by 5 a.m. Harvey used an old janitor's key to unlock the side door. It creaked open, revealing dark marble hallways and musty walls that had seen too much and forgotten too little. He didn't speak much as he guided them down to the basement flashlight beam flickering ahead. Emily clutched the satchel tighter, every step heavier than the last. Nora walked behind her gun tucked in her coat. Ethan stayed close, jaw tight, scanning every corner. They reached a steel door hidden behind a false utility panel. Harvey punched in a 6-digit code. The door buzzed, unlocked. Inside, a narrow stairwell leading deeper underground. You sure about this? Ethan asked. Harvey didn't look back. This is where it all began. They descended into silence. The archive wasn't big, just one long, concrete room lined with shelves. It smelled like copper and mold and something else. Guilt, maybe. The lights flickered to life as Harvey flipped a breaker. Row after row of boxes, manila folders, reel-to-reel tapes, Polaroids, even hand-signed letters from state officials. It wasn't just a paper trail. It was a graveyard. This is the real vault, Harvey said. Thornfield's final insurance. If anyone ever came too close, he could take them down with one phone call. Emily opened a folder at random. Inside, evidence of a mining disaster cover-up that killed 12. Another contained surveillance logs of journalists who'd disappeared. A third had photographs of children, land seizure victims, orphaned, displaced. Ethan's voice was quiet. This isn't corruption. This is a system built on bones. Nora found a small safe in the back. Harvey opened it with a key he'd worn around his neck. Inside, a thumb drive, labeled only with a date, March 14th, 2001. Harvey handed it to Emily. That's everything. Every blackmail piece, every payoff, every name Thornfield ever used to control this town. Governors, judges, senators. He didn't just run Jericho. He franchised it. Emily took it without a word. Ethan opened his laptop, slid the drive in, and began uploading it to the secure media drop they'd prepared. A live stream started automatically. It's out of our hands now, he said. Then they heard it. Footsteps above. Too many to be janitors. Then voices sharp, controlled. Thompson. They locked the stairwell door, but they knew it wouldn't hold. Ethan looked at Harvey. How many men does he have? Enough? Nora pulled her pistol. We hold them off long enough for the upload to finish. That's all that matters. Emily stood in front of the laptop, her heart thudding in her chest. Then the door exploded inward. Flashbang. Yelling. Thompson's men in tactical gear poured in like a wave. Ethan tackled one. Nora fired a shot into the ceiling, sending them scattering. Harvey used the butt of a flashlight to knock one cold. It was chaos. Then a gunshot, and Harvey fell. Emily screamed. Ethan dove for the laptop, shielding it as two agents grabbed him and dragged him back. Thompson stepped in, calm and composed. His eyes fell on the screen. Upload complete. Too late. The screen blinked once, then showed streaming live to 3,904 viewers. The number kept climbing. Thompson looked at Emily. You think this changes anything? Emily's voice was steady, raw. It already has. He raised his gun. Another voice cut through the air. Put it down. Thompson, half the agents turned. Federal marshals, uniforms, badges, real ones. Ronan. He stepped through the broken stairwell door with 6 other agents, guns drawn. Thompson froze. This is bigger than you, he hissed. Ronan's voice was ice. That's the point. Thompson was arrested on the spot. So were 3 of his agents. The rest surrendered. By noon, the live stream had gone viral. Every name, every bribe, every buried secret. News anchors were scrambling. Congressmen were issuing statements. The Thornfield family name was radioactive. Jericho was no longer a secret. It was a symbol. They buried Harvey on a ridge above the town next to his wife. No service, no ceremony, just Emily, Ethan, and Nora standing in silence. The wind was soft. The trees didn't judge. He did terrible things, Emily whispered, but he tried to fix them. In the end. Ethan nodded. Sometimes justice isn't a clean ledger. Sometimes it's a blood-stained receipt. Nora placed a photo of Samuel Dawson on the grave. This story started with a silence. I'm glad it ended with a voice. They stood there a long time. In the weeks that followed, Jericho unraveled. Land was returned. Prosecutions were filed. Buildings were torn down. Not all the guilty were caught. Some ran. Some had already died. Some rebranded and tried to hide behind new names. But something had changed. People weren't afraid anymore. Emily returned to writing. Her first article wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. Ethan left the service, became an advocate for small towns, places like Jericho, that had long been forgotten and used. Nora stayed in Jericho, took over the local paper, rebuilt it from the ashes. Months later, they met again, standing outside the ruins of the old Thornfield Emporium. Now, just a hollow shell. Emily smiled faintly. Funny how it started here. Ethan looked at the burned rafters. It always starts with a door. Nora nodded. And someone brave enough to open it. They stood there, 3 people who had lost too much and found just enough. You can't bury the truth, Emily said. It always finds a way back to the surface. And this time the world was listening.